good morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever you are in the different time zones. Really happy to have you joining us for this Global Bioimaging Spotlight seminar. And we're excited to have Graham Wright here today, who will be telling us about the role that an MBA can play for microscopy core facility manager. But before I introduce Graham, we have a couple of brief introduction to global bioimaging and the career path working group in case you don't know about this yet. And then we have a couple of announcements and upcoming opportunities from global bioimaging that we wanted to share with everybody. Firstly, I hope you all know this, global bioimaging is an international network of imaging facilities, infrastructures, community networks, including 13 networks and more than 60 countries by now. And the opportunities that global bioimaging presents are open to all imaging scientists, and particularly focused at imaging scientists in core facilities. Global bioimaging has three main pillar activities: the annual Exchange of Experience conference, the different working groups that are working together to connect imaging scientists around the world and to produce international recommendations, as well as a training and job shadowing program. There are a number of different working groups, including on image data, biomedical imaging, training, impact assessment, quality management, as well as the career development working group, which is the working group that hosts the seminar series. All of these working groups are open for everybody to join. If you're interested, you can check the Global Bioimaging website to find out more about these groups and to sign up for them. You're also very warmly invited to sign up for the new Global Bioimaging newsletter that is now the second iteration of the newsletter, I think, has gone out. That's being prepared by Sophie, who is here on the call. And this is a great way to stay up to date on all the latest developments from global bioimaging. Within the career path working group, which Graham was the original chair of this working group and has been really working a lot in this over the last years in this group. So this is really a pleasure to introduce at his seminar to introduce now the working group that he spent so much time working on. We have now in the beginning of this year published an international recommendation called Charting a Course for Success on the international recommendations for imaging scientists career paths in core facilities. And there's also a shorter version of this international recommendation published in the Journal of Microscopy. We'll link both of this in the chat as well. But this paper is meant as a living document, and the working group is continuing work on this topic. So anybody who's interested in this is very warmly welcome to join our career path working group. And we are also asking you, so we're collecting now information for follow-up work around the career path challenges around the world. So we're asking everybody, in case you haven't done so, to submit the survey about the top 5 challenges on your career path. And this is a bigger mapping exercise that we are doing now until the end of the year. And we really hope to get as many responses there as possible. So if you can fill this out and if you can share this with your colleagues, that would be great. And you have the QR code here on the screen for this. But we'll also put the link to the survey in the chat again. And we have now, so this was a bit of an introduction to the working group and the career path aspect, but now there's a couple of really last minute opportunities from global bioimaging. So the first one is that an invitation for this year's annual Exchange of Experience conference, which will take place at the end of October, so from the 29th to the 31st of October, hosted by ABIS, the Japanese imaging community in Okazaki in Japan. The topic is Image Data Horizons, so working on image data management and image data analysis. And registration for this event is still open until the end of this month, so also until the end of this week. So if you haven't registered yet, but you would like to join us in Japan, please register. This event is also open as a hybrid event, so you, in case you cannot travel, you're also very welcome to join online and join the discussions and hear about all the community presentations on this important topic. We also have a training opportunity that comes from the new microtutor program, which is an online training platform that's supported in the development by Global Bioimaging, that provides entirely free training courses. Now in the first module focused on fluorescence microscopy, there will be a dedicated live course, including online work virtually, as well as joint discussions with really great international trainers. This course starts in September, on September 9th, and you can still sign up until September 4th if you want to join this course. And last but certainly not least, the Global Bioimaging job shadowing program is still currently open with a call for international intercontinental job shadowing. So this is really targeted at imaging facility staff to visit one another within the Global Bioimaging network, to learn from each other and work together. So this program provides travel support for these international visits, and the calls are still open. The call is still open until September 9th. And we post a link to the list of the hosting institution and all the application information in the chat in a minute as well. And also, of course, we're very happy to have you here today for this seminar, but we'll have the seminar now continuing every month, always on the last Thursday of the month. And the next iteration of this event will take place on the 25th of September and 26th of September, so the 2 different time slots. And we're really happy to welcome then the presenters from the Technician Commitment, Kelly Veer and Andrew Philby, who will be telling us about this approach in the UK to raise awareness of the role that technical staff play in research. But now we've finally done with all the announcements, and it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today. Graham Wright joins us from Singapore, where he is the director of the Research Support Center at ASTAR, the Agency for Science, Technology and Research. Graham has a PhD in cell biology and physics from the University of Edinburgh, but during his PhD, I think he must have become really interested in microscopy, because ever since then he's been working and leading various core facilities and pushing access and supporting researchers with advanced microscopy tools. Graham has also been very involved in setting up SingaScope, the Singapore-wide network and infrastructure that provides access across institutions for researchers to to microscopy tools, and that is the partner within Global Bioimaging. And as I already mentioned, Graham has also been the chair of the Career Path Working Group and really active in Global Bioimaging and advocating for imaging scientists around the world. Graham, thank you so much for joining us today, and it's a real pleasure to have you, and please go ahead with your presentation.
Excellent. Thank you, Johanna, for the kind introduction, and also for the opportunity to speak. It's very much appreciated. And as you say, Global Bioimaging is an initiative very close to my heart, particularly the careers perspective. So I'm glad to have this opportunity. Let me just share my presentation. Hopefully, let me know if it comes through okay. Make sure it fills the screen as well. Okay, hopefully that's all okay.
Yes, perfect. We can see the slides.
Great. Okay, good afternoon from Singapore to everybody, although I recognize that everybody's on probably a different time zone. So whatever time of day it is for you, thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to be here and an exciting opportunity to share with you my experience, at least, on this topic. What I'll do throughout the presentation is initially give an introduction and background to myself, some of which Johanna's already mentioned, so I can skip over. I'll then talk about my own career and how an MBA has had an influence on that. And I've noticed on the LinkedIn post about this that there was already some debate about this, so I'm glad that it's a stimulating topic, and I look forward to some discussion on this. I'll then focus on one aspect of impact and performance where I feel it has been useful for me to apply some of the knowledge and skills learned during that time that has then sort of manifested itself as a useful thing within this organization. And then I'll attempt to reflect a little bit on some of the things career-wise that have helped me develop my career in the way it has, maybe as a means of kind of sharing that with you and seeing if it could be useful in different contexts for different people that are listening. So first off, on the introduction and background, as Johanna said, I've been involved with running core facilities for a long time, since my PhD. all of which have been in Singapore and mostly at the A-Star microscopy platform, as it's called now, although it's been through a few name changes. And this is summarized here, right? It's a collection of some incredible microscopes that put together all of these different techniques and capabilities that we then share with the wider community. And that's evolved over time from being a smaller, more internally focused facility to one of open and sharing platform with the wider research ecosystem here in Singapore and more regionally and potentially beyond as well. And as well as trying to keep up with the latest techniques and so on. So it's summarized really on this page in terms of the techniques that we have available and some examples of the research that we've supported in doing so. It has three different mechanisms of access, essentially, that we try and get into the conversation very early. And I highlight along the bottom here the real experts of this facility, my colleagues that are led by Xiao, but all have their own domains and expertise, as you can see here. And they're really the critical part of this facility. Is not just a collection of instruments, it's what the expertise can enhance and enable the instruments to do in pursuit of the research of our colleagues, the different research landscape. But we try and get into the conversation as early as possible, have a conversation, understand the experiment, and help advise as to what might be the most suitable approach, both technologically as well as the different routes of access that we have, with the intent in enhancing the research outcomes of that paper or speeding it up, as the case may be. Also highlight here, because it's relevant for a later part of the talk, about Xu Ping on the right-hand side of the slide there is an industry collaborator from our partner Evident, who works within the facility full-time, but is actually employed by Evident, and that's been a fantastic relationship for us, which I'll touch on later. The suite of instruments we have are not all in one location. They're spread across the different A-Star research institutes within Biopolis in Singapore, for anyone that's familiar with that. And you can see there's a coordination there for multiple satellite sites, as well as the main location in Asral and in the Proteus building. That is a relatively new initiative that we've absorbed or merged together with other capabilities that were in the very close neighborhood, giving us the advantages of central management, but also the advantages of satellite locations that are located conveniently for the researchers that are handling live cells and other such cases that need microscopes to be close by them. And as Johanna alluded to, the development of the A-Star microscopy platform and parallel developments in NUS, NTU, the universities within Singapore, and in other clinical research organizations, led us to form what we called SingaScope, a Singapore-wide microscopy infrastructure network. So this was built on many of the principles of other initiatives in this space, BioImaging and so on, to really bring together this community of imaging scientists or people working in microscopy facilities and the equipment that's there, even though it's distributed across the island, as you can see on the map. That's a relatively small distance in global terms. Singapore's only about 35 kilometers long. So you can see that these are all readily accessible to the research community here. This was really triggered by the announcement of a grant from the National Research Foundation in Singapore that wanted to see this kind of sharing and open access to research infrastructure or equipment. And our aims, as highlighted in the bullet points, are really targeting that, right? So access to all scientists, open and shared resources, the means of finding that equipment. And if you browse on SingaScope.sg, you'll find there's a tool not only to search for the equipment, but to search for the expertise. And we can touch on that later also. To continue to expand the capabilities to keep up with the technology, but also to avoid unnecessary duplication. So if you browse through the SingaScope platforms, you'll find we differentiate at the very high level or high-end equipment, but of course we all have some of the more routine or workhorse equipment common across the different locations. Developing Singapore's human capital, that's not only training our user base of our instruments, but training one another through trainer-trainer programs or through courses that we each share with one another or engage to contribute to each other's courses. facilitating that exchange of experience, as I said, and then engaging Singapore internationally. And I'd like to say that the global bioimaging was growing rapidly at the time that we developed the SingaScope network, and it's been an absolute pleasure to be part of, and it's been very helpful in continuing to develop this initiative. Since its initial conception, which is captured on the map, it's continued to grow into more research organizations, more microscopy partner platforms, more experts, more equipment, therefore. And then more recently, we're also collaborating or working closely with the SingEM, the electron microscopy community, and the SingMass, the mass spectrometry community here in Singapore, to try and draw those different analytical capabilities together where it makes sense to. Obviously, there's a naming system for any network of infrastructure in Singapore, as you can see on screen. Right. I already mentioned it, Global Bioimaging. We were very lucky, and it was a pleasure to host the meeting in 2019, just before everything kicked off, of course, soon thereafter with COVID. But it was an in-person meeting, and these are really, really valuable meetings in my experience. And this is what kickstarted the careers working group that then led on to. Okay, so to complete some of the introductory points, because I think it's important for what I'll say later. A*STAR is the Agency for Science Technology Research in Singapore. It's a government-funded research organization, and our aims or mission is set out on the screen. The impact is to create economic growth and improve lives, as you can see on lots of the slides at the bottom. So it's quite different in a sense to the universities, which pursue more fundamental research. We're meant to be very connected to industry and applied uses and applications for the research that we're doing. Within the biomedical side of A*STAR, A*STAR is a very big organization, approximately 6,000 people, split into two: the Science and Engineering Research Council, which is materials research, high performance computing, etc., and then the biomedical research side, which is captured here on screen. And you can see we're organized into these different research institutes across different disciplines, some of which are overlapping with one another or interrelated, others which stand alone, being in a slightly different research area. But you can see the broad variety of research that's going on. And the message here really is that they are very reliant on the different technology platforms that we call them, or core facilities that they're called elsewhere in the world, to underpin that research and provide access to different capabilities, whether it's flow cytometry, genomics, microscopy, of course, from our perspective, and other capabilities that we organize into these technology platforms. And they're underpinning. Most of our platforms are housed within a different research institute, close to the researchers, the main research base, but they're shared widely across the research ecosystem. And then we come to the Research Support Center, which is a department I'm now responsible for. And it's really kind of does exactly what the name suggests. We're here to support. So we don't actually carry out our own research. We enable and help research in lots of different ways. From the provision of research consumables, we buy large quantities in bulk, and then we supply it. We hold a store, we supply it to the research community here efficiently and as cost effectively as possible. We also run or oversee and coordinate the different technology platforms that we have. Like I said, they're housed within the RIs, but we support them largely with an aim of trying to lift the administrative burden off them as much as possible, which I'll go into more details of. Then we also run some of the fundamental support services, things like glassware washing, sterilization services, biohazard waste handling, which are kind of the cogs that keep the engine running, if you like, keep everything running very smoothly. And something I want to emphasize is that we're here not just to support A*STAR's research, but also the academic sector and the industry, private sector, have access to these different capabilities housed within A*STAR also. So quite a varied role. Obviously my background is in the technology platform space, specifically in microscopy, but this has definitely broadened the different roles, responsibilities, and certainly the conversations that I have with different people across the research ecosystem. I feel like I'm probably preaching to the converted with this slide about the value of technology platforms and what they can bring to a sort of vibrant research ecosystem. About reducing barriers to entry, accelerating research, providing technical expertise to accompany the equipment so that people can get on with their research as rapidly as possible, and making sure they're doing it as rigorously and properly as possible as well. I won't go into this any further, but certainly we put great value in the importance of these technology platforms in support of the research going on here. And we have a huge suite of these capabilities. I'll highlight perhaps the bigger ones or the more obvious ones on this slide. And the A-star microscopy platform is one of these, one of the bigger ones along the top row there. And then we're seeing some nascent things come up, like the multiplexed analysis, whereby we can do spatial omics, if you like, across different platforms, and then try and combine these technologies together, relying heavily on the bioinformatics, of course, but bringing in, for example, mass spec, genomics, and microscopy all into the same field, working on the same sample and the same problem, which I think is a very exciting space to be working in. As I mentioned earlier, we're here to try and alleviate a lot of the administration of the scientists working in these core facilities, such that they can focus on being the scientists that work in these core facilities. So as RSC, we do a lot of the front end, if you like, and the back end work. So front end would be marketing, dealing with initial client inquiries and engagement before it becomes a technical conversation, helping with the advertising events, promoting these different capabilities. At the back end, it's things like the billing and the finance and so on, that again can be quite a chore, I would say, depending on the setup that you're working in, but we try and make that as slick and smooth as possible, or take some of that responsibility off the different platforms. And then more recently, in the right-hand column, this is something we've been developing, which I'll go into in greater detail, is about having a way to measure the impact and assess the performance of platforms in a way that the platforms can then appeal to their funding organizations or their managers, and use real data to showcase how successful and how significant a job they're doing, and the positive impact that can make. Two things just to briefly touch on. One aspect of that raising awareness has been generating visibility of the different equipment, scientific equipment that's available, and we've done that in two ways. One is the A-star Scientific Equipment Finder on the left side there, and that's a tool where you can search what scientific equipment A-star has that's available to use from an outside perspective or an inside perspective. And when you find the tool, and when you find the tool of interest, you can then go and find out more about it, the technical specifications, the prices, who to speak to, etc. And we took a similar approach with the SingaScope website. We also have a Find the Expert tool there based on feedback and so on, where you can search a particular technique and connect it to the people with the real expertise in that area, or with that instrumentation. Okay. So I shall move on to the next section, with perhaps the meat of the talk to some degree, and give a perspective on my own career, and then where this MBA that I did has proven useful, or where some of the things I learned in the MBA perhaps has proven useful. So I tried to summarize my career to date here. I grew up in Manchester, not wanting to get into football, but that's where I grew up. And then I went to study, as Johanna said earlier, in Edinburgh, where I stayed for a PhD. That PhD was biology, physics, but it was really about finding novel applications for novel microscopy technologies, which gave me the bug for microscopy. But by the end of that, I realized I probably didn't want to go and do a postdoc, or at least to undertake a new postdoctoral project. So at the time, the role of the facility manager, or the role of core facilities, should I say, was developing apace, and it was becoming perhaps an alternative career option for somebody with that experience. And I certainly loved microscopy. I loved teaching other people how to use microscopes within the lab and so on. And I was fortunate, through connections through my supervisor and his network, to find out about this opportunity in Singapore at a place called Temasek Life Science Laboratory. And I was fortunate to get that job. And as I was transiting from Edinburgh to Singapore, there was an opportunity to go to MBA in Heidelberg to spend some time while the visa and the paperwork came through before I moved to Singapore, which was a really a valuable opportunity to visit the ALMF there for some time and really understand how they ran that facility and bring some of that with me to Singapore. 3 years with TLL before I moved over to A-Star. And then, as you can see, I've been through a series of positions here, always involved with the microscopy, but now moved more and more into this new role with the newer role with the Research Support Centre in more recent years. In parallel to that, the institutions changed name around us, or we got moved around within different institutions, as you can see. And I also helped work together with the LKC School of Medicine, which is in NTU, one of the universities, as they established their imaging facilities. Obviously, what we're highlighting here is that from 2017 for 3 years till 2020, I undertook an MBA. I chose to do that to learn some new things, to get some new skills, and really do some kind of formal education around some of the things I felt that would be useful to do at the time. And this spanned a period highlighted in blue, as you can see here, from over which time my role began to change into the role that I now have in RSC. And I think it was probably enabling for that to some degree, because it is quite a change in role from a more technical microscopy role to now a much more kind of managerial administrative role. But it wasn't done directly for that reason. And I think one of the things I want to look at today and hopefully stimulate discussion on is some of the things that I learned during that course. I think would be valuable for use in various different levels or positions within a core facility environment also. And I'll also hopefully get across that there's alternative ways to get some of this knowledge or experience as well. So the MBA I undertook was a distance learning MBA, or so-called blended learning MBA at the Warwick University, which is just outside Coventry in the UK, and specifically at the Warwick Business School, which was very highly rated MBA at the time. I should go and check where it's at now. But the reason for doing it as a distance learning or this blended arrangement was because I wanted that kind of flexibility with location, because it was a commitment for a long period of time. So it was to ensure that I had that flexibility. It was well ranked at the time, and it was accredited by these organizations that assess MBAs for their education and the impact it can have and so on. I think one of the things that was drawn attention to, certainly in the LinkedIn conversation that started, was around the significant cost, and that is not to be underestimated. These are very, very expensive things to do, as well as the commitment in time. As you saw from my previous slide, it was a 3-year program and was significant. It was doing it on top of my day job, if you like, and a significant impact in terms of the commitment of time and effort that went into that. One thing I liked about the Warwick course, other than this flexibility that we talked about and how well thought of it was also that it had a requirement for 5 years of managerial experience before you could apply. And that meant that the cohort of people that were there, that you were interacting with a lot, of course, with the group work and so on, was one, incredibly interesting set of people, but two, all had that shared experience to bring to the table of some experience of leading or managing or in different organizations that we could then build off. So there was a mixture within the course, a mixture of modules that some you had to do, accounting, for example, and others that were more kind of selective or you could choose between. And the ones that I did are listed out here. Now, I won't go through every one in detail, of course, but hopefully looking through them, that you can see things in there that would be of potential value to someone working within or leading or overseeing, perhaps, core facilities and microscopy facilities. Now, that's somewhat abstract, I imagine, but there are direct links, right? Whether it's strategy or marketing or doing the accounts and the financial side or running the operations, there are elements of this, I'm sure, that would resonate with anybody working in a core facility. The final part of the degree was a research-based dissertation, which I chose to obviously, as much as possible, center around some of the work that I was doing at the time. So this academic industry collaborations, how core and the role of core facilities can play in that, building off some of the experiences I'd had, as well as interviewing people from various different organizations that were extremely useful to get their input on how core technologies can have an influence on academic industry collaborations. So that summarizes the course. I want to emphasize, though, that this isn't the only way you can get this kind of experience or education that you can take forward. There's several initiatives, and I'll highlight two here that are aimed at doing somewhat similar things. So at Northwestern, Phil Hochberger, who's been extremely active in this area, implemented the Leadership and Management in Core Facilities course, which I think is a 1 to 2 week course focused on exactly this. So it's picking out these elements, if you like, of a more kind of comprehensive MBA that are of relevance to core facilities. You can see here some examples of leadership topics, of fiscal strategy and management topics, all of which are tuned in this case to be directly relevant to a core facility in a non-profit setting, so in a university setting. So highly recommend that. Much lower burden financially and on time, and is very focused on the particular topic at hand. Likewise, on the right hand side, the German BioImaging have developed a similar course, and you can see from the bullet points there that they are again, there's elements that are would be part of a bigger, more comprehensive course. And again, it's tuned specifically to core facility leadership and the management of those core facilities, both of which I've heard very, very good things about. I had a chance to see the Northwestern one in person, and it was fantastic. It's taught by the Kellogg Business School as well, so it's coming from that business school perspective. So yeah, highly recommend them. So in preparation for this this webinar, I looked back at the special issue that I highly recommend, also that came out only a couple of months ago in the Journal of Microscopy. One of the articles of which was the one we wrote as this working group on recognizing the importance and impact of imaging scientists. So it's a sort of shorter form, if you like, of the white paper that's published on the Global Bioimaging website. And I went through and pulled out some examples, not all the papers, some examples of the papers down the left-hand side of the screen, and thought about these different facets of core facility and core facility operations and core facility management, and thought about how they may interrelate to some of the things that I learned or was taught or experienced on the course. And I highlight in yellows some examples of this. So partnerships between academia and industry, full cost recovery, strategy, like long-term planning, etc., innovation, future-proofing, again, links to strategy and long-term planning, long-term sort of insulation from outside forces, recognizing the importance and impact of people, as well as measuring some of that, and looking after the people and nurturing the talent, training the talent, etc., come into that. And then particularly focused on this figure that came out of the Tranfield and Lippen's paper, which is very, very interesting one, about the 7-pillar model that they drew. And you can see the foundations of their 7-pillar model are set in operational matters, framework matters, and cultural matters, which are highly relevant to some of the things that I studied as part of that MBA program. So I think hopefully with this, you can see that if we take a special issue on specifically on core facility management, you can pull out threads of why studying business more broadly could be business and management more broadly could be a very useful thing to do. Highlighted here, I've sort of translated that back to the previous slide. You can see the courses or the modules that I undertook that are directly relevant. Now, I'm certainly not advocating everybody rushes off and looks into doing MBAs, but I'm just hopefully emphasizing how it's proven useful to me, and why, while they may seem a bit two different worlds, they do converge on these topics. I also surprised myself during this undertaking this course. I actually quite enjoyed accountancy, which I thought I would hate, but you never know how it's going to turn out. But you can see things like organizational behavior. That's a lot to do with the people that are working in an organization. Marketing, we all have to promote ourselves as a facility. We need to run the operations and do that smoothly. We need to think strategically about planning for the future, the different technologies that are arriving and developing, how to best implement them and innovate in that environment. And of course, I framed my dissertation project exactly around some of the things we were doing at work. So just to give perhaps an example of how I've used some of this thing together with colleagues here in A-Star is around impact and performance. And something we're implementing, I would say not implemented, is the platform performance metrics. And I would like to acknowledge Phil, Ian, and Sheena for some incredible advice and kind of guidance, mentorship they've given me along the way as we've done this from their own perspectives in Northwestern at Monash and in NYU Langone Med School. And we've developed this set of metrics that we can now measure effectively in the different platforms that we work with, not just microscopy, but across them all, and then balance them or tune them according to what we may expect or would like to see from these platforms. And you can see they're very broad ranging and diverse. And this also aligns quite well to some of the work done, some of the fantastic work done, I should say, by Claire and Laurence. There was also a global bioimaging initiative on the impact that core facilities can have. I think their paper is wonderful because it also gives a guide for how accessible or how easy to measure some of these factors are. And therefore, you can sort of phase the implementation of these based on that. It's highly recommended. The QR code will take you to that, or it's very readily findable on the GBI website. So we've taken those metrics that I outlined, and we've grouped them into different categories, and we've started to routinely measure them. And this is all very open and transparent. The facilities can use them to talk to their management, talk to their funders to help get that argument across. But it's also a tool to showcase how over time, longitudinally, a facility is developing or growing or otherwise. And that also links into a bigger project we've been undertaking called the A-Star Scientific Equipment Data Cube. And I already introduced ASEF, where you can search and find the equipment. That links fundamentally to PPMS, Stratacor's PPMS, the booking system, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, that we've now rolled out across the whole of A-Star. So this is both the science and engineering side and the bio. So you can now find equipment from across the whole of A-Star. There's a mechanism and a route to how to access that equipment through the booking system and through the other mechanisms we have in place. And then increasingly, we now have the tools and the reporting and analytics that we can take some of that data and use it as part of this platform performance metrics system that I introduced. The problem is, not only have we got a lot of equipment and a lot of people keen to use it, but now we have a huge amount of data, and it's literally overwhelming, right? It kicks out a phenomenal amount of data, a snapshot of which is here. And you can lose the wood for the trees, if you know what I mean. There's so much data, you can't take it in. So the more recent side of the project is really focused on the dashboarding and reporting of that data to make it kind of digestible and tuned to whoever's mining the data, whether it's the facility manager or the equipment owner or the head of an institute, or more strategically higher up in the organization, for example, the senior managers of A-Star. So we're working on these dashboards. They're still a work in progress, but they can be tuned according to who's looking or why you're looking, whether it's from a strategic standpoint or a more operational standpoint, as well as you can deep dive through to the individual piece of equipment if you so need to. So that's a project that continues, and I look forward to talking about that at another occasion, or presenting it when I get the opportunity, when we have a more kind of finished product in that space. Okay, so moving on, just to quickly sort of wrap up and hopefully move the discussion. It's a bit of kind of personal reflection on what I think has proven useful. That's clearly not all about doing an MBA. I think that has helped me, and I think it's been a useful, very useful thing to do, and has certainly enabled opportunities to present themselves or opportunities to grow within the organization. But lots of other things have gone alongside of that, and I already kind of alluded to this on one of the slides about the different bosses, supervisors, mentors, societies, or even friends or colleagues that I've worked with and sought advice off over time. I picture some people who have had very strong influence on that, but I'd also highlight the different societies or groups, global bioimaging, etc., that have had a very positive impact on that because of the people you meet and the opportunities to discuss certain matters. But you've got to make the most of it. You can tell this is in COVID because I'm wearing a mask, but carpe diem, right? Seize the opportunity to present themselves, and I think that's something we do here, or I'd like to think that we do here, which is to get ourselves involved in all sorts of things, from art projects to hosting conferences to running booths, working on TV shows, all sorts of different activities that we've done as a core facility that have really opened up other opportunities and have been kind of really valuable experience to kind of further ourselves, but also get awareness and involved in lots of really positive things. Oops, sorry. And this isn't done in isolation at all, right? It's all done with amazing colleagues and team members, and some snapshots. Some of people on here you'll recognize, others perhaps are more kind of Singapore focused, but lots of teamwork goes into this, right, to make all of these different things work and happen, and it's certainly not by any individual, by the collective working together. So with that, I'll start to wrap up. So I think Johanna already mentioned this at the start, and I've mentioned a little bit as we go on, but there's the white paper, and then the slightly more concise journal and microscopy paper, which I'd encourage you to. The working group is now led by this wonderful group of people: Johanna, Michelle, Yara, and Kerry, and it goes from strength to strength, and it's wonderful to see that happening. And I still contribute in some of the subgroups and activities that go on there. So please do join up and contribute to this and help shape its forward journey. Also highlight this book, which is very, very nice visualizations of the concepts and so on that you would experience in an MBA or the different things that are in there in these courses, like I said, and it's all drawn out as kind of sketches, very accessible way to get into some of these concepts. So certainly recommend that. I'll highlight a course that we're hosting with GBI in Singapore in October. The registration is still open, and it's exactly some of the things we've been talking about, how to run facilities, and we've got some fantastic speakers coming in from around the world to help teach on that. Everything from designing the building to implementing a charging policy to how do you train people effectively and so on, and everything in between. And with that, I will finish. I'll thank you for your attention and the opportunity again to speak. We'd be very happy to take any questions or open a discussion, and stay in touch. Thank you very much.